Beginning in July, I worked with a team of young economists, and we went through over 500 applications to INET. And while I was very excited by particular proposals, which I can talk about in a moment, the thing that most impressed me was how much developed and exciting thinking is already out there. It's not considered part of the mainstream. It's not considered part of the prevailing paradigm that led us into the crisis. But it's fully developed, it's fully nourished, it's waiting to come forward and be amplified and become part of the central debate. So I think there's an awful lot of what I will call new and strong thinking out there in the woods. It only needs to be recognized and amplified, and INET wants to be a partner with our grantees in that process. Let me just give you some highlights of some things that really were exciting and invigorated our research jury and our governing board as we came to our final determination. When I look at particular grants, I know Stephen Fazari's grant on non-equilibrium economics, looking at the relationship of slump and high unemployment to the atrophy of the productive resources of a society. We have lots of people now who are advocating budget austerity in the aftermath of the crisis, and somewhat disappointingly, many of them come from the financial sector that is responsible for the crisis and the budget deficits that ensued. But those budget hawks are not looking at the way out of a sovereign debt crisis that must emerge from growth and dynamism, retooling of our society's productive apparatus. And Fazari's grant at the Washington University in St. Louis looks to be very, very promising in that regard. Jerry Epstein at University of Massachusetts is taking on one of the most important and difficult questions, the role of finance, and to discriminate between that which is productive or meaningful finance and that which is what you might call superfluous or gambling. Many people are very critical of the financial sector, which has gotten larger and larger in scope in relation to the underlying economy, culminating in 2007, where U.S. financial sector profits were 46% of total corporate profit in the entire economy. There's lots of work that's done on an efficient financial system, and none of them could ever explain finance playing that large a role. We see many of our finest young undergraduates from our elite schools in the United States all going into the financial sector, and what Jerry is looking at is whether these people are being channeled into careers that not only are privately lucrative, but portend to be socially productive. William Lazonick has looked at the interaction between financial markets and innovation and the implications for society. His book in 2010, Sustainable Growth for the New Economy, looked at the information communication technology industry, and it won the 2010 Schumpeter Prize for the most important book on the economics of innovation. He's come to us with a grant proposal that the board has decided to honor to look at the implication of stock market and stock buybacks on technological development, research, R&D spending levels, and therefore the potential for productivity and growth emanating from our most technologically advanced sectors in the future. Bill's work, while an individual grant, is suggestive of the kind of work that we'll also do in the task force on economics of innovation. And Lazonick himself has been a specialist of building teams and task forces. He's very engaged with European scholars, Asian scholars, and his institutional economics. And what I mean by that is truly understanding the history and the challenges of the contemporary environment, real firms, real institutions, is among the most exciting practice of applied economics that our governing board examined in this process. One of the exciting projects that came to our attention and the governing board decided to make an award to was a young Chinese scholar who's going to study the imperial examination system and its influence on the economic hierarchy and developments in China. We all know that in China, the role of government and party leaders in determining and directing economic policy is very formidable at the present. They have a tremendous influence not only in China, but on the world as a whole. But to look at those earlier times and look at that imperial examination system as a form of social control and human capital development is a very exciting endeavor. Margaret Levenstein and Naomi Lamoureux have put together a grant that studies the city of Cleveland, and they look at how Cleveland was devastated in a period of deficient demand. Their view is that the product that was being built and underway and emerging in Cleveland depended not only on the ingenuity of people in that region, in the manufacturing hubs in and around the Cleveland marketplace, but it also depended on federal policies and global policies, and in many respects, successful and outstanding firms and successful and outstanding innovation was wiped out by the tide of the economic slump. In economics and the study of market imperfections, one of the great innovations, one of the great challenges to thinking had been the Coase theorem. It's had an enormous impact on the discipline of law and economics, and Stephen Medema has just received a grant to examine the Coase theorem, its shortcomings, its strengths, and look at many ways in which it's had an impact on society. I think this is a very, very important thing to examine in great depth at a time when climate crisis, financial spillovers, and other what economists call externalities have come to the fore. In the history of economic thought, one very exciting project is Wade Hans, who's very, very well known as a methodologist, and he's going to embrace the work and the papers of Paul Samuelson, who may have been the most formidable economist in the period since the Great Depression. He certainly set the tone and came up with many of the innovations and ways of looking at things and employing mathematics that led to the prevailing paradigm. Bruce Caldwell, who runs the History of Economic Thought unit at Duke, and is really the foremost platform in reinvigorating the history of economic thought, has written many books on the Nobel Prize-winning scholar Friedrich von Hayek. Bruce, in addition to his own work on Hayek, has shepherded summer camps, schools, seminars, conference volumes, and edited many of the leading journals in history of economic thought. And we are very excited to invigorate his program and work with him to expand all around the world to enlarge the appreciation of and the teaching of the history of economic thought. This summer, I had the chance to read over 520 grant proposals, and the quality of curiosity, the quality of insight, and the what you might call daring within the profession to go and do new things and invigorate things that have been a little bit pushed aside. That gave me a great deal of heart and a great deal of optimism. I think we're going to get this done.